right? The word in this verse for fear, and most of the times in the Torah that fear is used, is tira. Now, the taf at the beginning is affixed to the beginning to signify future tense, meaning you shall fear. But the root word, as you see here, is yira. Tabitha flash that up very quickly. Let's see if we can get that back up there. Yud Resh Aleph, yira, which means from ro'eh, to see. That's what really the word fear means when it's used almost all of the time. Hashem is called the Pachad Yitzchak, the fear of Isaac, and the word lefached, the conventional fear, is used there. But most of the time, that's what it is, yirah. And that cuts to the root of it. The word really is a mistranslation, but the translation is used for the same reason that I begrudgingly often use it myself. And that's because the conventional fear that we often think about is a natural consequence of seeing, of beholding, right? The word yirah actually means seeing, beholding with your eyes, on some level seeing. And I'm going to try to explain to you what I mean. When I was early on in my relationship with Hashem, in my journey, which is really, I think, if I had to trace it back, some people ask me, when did I become a Baal Tshuva? When did I start my Tshuva process? Because I wasn't raised in a family that we kept the laws of Sabbath. So the conventional understanding is, when did I start keeping the Sabbath? And that's when I became religious. But really, it was much more before that. And I really have to trace it back to when I started thinking. That's really when the relationship when Hashem started, at least the intellectual, conscious relationship with Hashem. Maybe before then, it was even more profound than that. It was beyond thinking. But when I started thinking, and I came to believe at some point when I was 13, 14, 15, I was internalizing the truth of Hashem, that he runs the world. It was a different understanding of Hashem. He wasn't as much infused. It was more like, I had the rabbi of my synagogue. He was like 6'4", and he was this good, loving, kind man, massive giant. And when I pictured Hashem, I sort of pictured this rabbi's face in the sky. I wish I brought a picture of this rabbi. His name is Rabbi Joseph Radinsky. If anyone wants to Google him at some point just to see, you could see the righteousness on him. I really miss him. May his memory be a blessing. But anyways, at that age, it was a fear of consequence, that I'd be punished for my sins, both in this world and in the next. But the more my relationship grew and evolved, the deeper and more profound my understanding of the Torah and Hashem became. And therefore, the fear didn't go away. But instead of a fear of punishment, it became a fear of detachment. Now, I know this is nothing new for most of you. You know this is sort of basic, but it's sometimes good to go back to the basics. So it became a fear of detachment, a fear of violating a relationship that was becoming the most intimate and profound relationship of my life. It became a fear that can be likened to what child psychologists call separation anxiety, right? Most of us as parents have seen it in our own children. I'm bracing myself, not successfully. I'm like dreading within in the next 2 weeks. Dvash is going to be starting a new kindergarten. And what I imagine will happen is what I remember happening the first day of the GAN that she went to last year. She showed up and she saw the toys and the other kids, and she was excited, and she ran in and she was playing. And then, we were sort of taking cautious steps backwards to slip out, and she saw us leaving and she ran towards us. You've seen it, right? You know what I'm talking about. She embraced us and she cleaved onto us crying, and she asked us not to leave. And it was just heartbreaking. I cried from the whole thing. Shayna was a little bit more stoic, but Shayna's more stoic than me. She's stronger than me. And so while it's often referred to as a phenomenon in child psychology, if you dig deep enough to the very core of our soul, I think we should simply just call it psychology, because we all have that fear of separation deep within us. Even, I don't know why child psychology is even a thing, because I think each of us, if we're really self-aware and conscious, the child is still alive within us. That's why, remember, they say about Sarah that she was 7 years and 20 years and 100 years, because, yeah, she was 127 years old, but that 7-year-old Sarah was still there. Was still there within her. And so we have that all within us if we're aware of it and honest about it. And so at least I do. And so that separation, that's the fear that I have, that fear of losing our connection with our Creator, with our Father in heaven. And I can honestly say that I can't remember the last time I even thought about the consequences of anything in the afterlife. I just don't think about it. And most of my friends, of my spiritual mentors, also don't think about it. My greatest fear is the detachment. Hashem operates with us. One of the facets of the relationship is a relationship dynamic of midah keneged midah, attribute for attribute. And if we violate the integrity of our relationship with him, if we distance ourselves from him, then he lets us, right? He allows us to have the perception that he's not with us anymore. And that loneliness, that disconnection that we've all felt, I believe I shouldn't speak for everybody, but I've certainly felt it. If you've felt that before, raise your hand. Okay, so that's most of us. That feeling of alienation. By the way, our beloved Stephanie so beautifully and vulnerably shared with us in the last fellowship connection her experience about that, and she was in tears about it. It was so raw and so real, and it's one of the most painful experiences, I think, in the human condition.